Assistance up to $20,000. I know it sounds unreal, but it's true. The Fed has to do better. Inflation is out of reach. The Federal Reserve has finally increased interest rates. Inflation is about to go down. Now let's go on with the story. Half a percentage point is exactly what the Federal Reserve raised interest rates by, which is pretty much in line with market expectations and the most in over 2 decades. The actions were expected together with the reduction of their balance sheet signed. Now, what is this going to do to inflation? At the moment, not much. Monetary policies usually take time to affect the economy. That was a pretty instant effect. Regarding the actions toward inflation, an article says they're a bit late to the party. They kept the monetary policy too loose for too long, and now they aim to apply stricter policies. Lately, all of the moves by the Fed have been reactive. They've not been as proactive as they should have been. It's like they waited for someone to say, oh hey, inflation is really bad, like historically bad. That's when they decided to make a move. The worst part is that when the Fed raises interest rates, everything else follows. It's kind of like the words come to line: student loan interest, credit card debt, auto loans, home mortgages. As a result of their action, or should I say inaction, and the outlook for our future is not very bright. Talk about telling us something we already know, whether the Fed has our best interest in their hearts or not. How do you guys feel about this? As the Fed will most probably never go past raising interest rates more than 50 basis points. It's pretty hard to assess when they'll actually catch up with the 40-year historic high inflation sitting at 8.5%. And this is really bad for the average American. If you are a business owner who suffered throughout the pandemic with losses, it's vital that assistance is provided in order for your business to thrive. And this is exactly why the state of North Carolina is again trying to give out pandemic relief money to businesses. All this relief money is just now been allocated last 2021. State lawmakers set aside $500 million for the Business Recovery Grant. It's run by the North Carolina Department of Revenue, and $280 million were distributed in early 2022, leaving more than $200 million left to be distributed. NCDOR Public Engagement Officer Will Furtro said this: if you were ineligible in Phase 1, or if you think you might be eligible for Phase 2, I really encourage you to go to our website and to read all the information that we've got there. It's our goal to get every cent of money out from these programs to every single eligible North Carolina business that needs it. So the deadline for the application is set for June the 1st. While the grant amounts cannot be determined until the end of the application period, those that don't get accepted into the program can expect to receive checks that will be mailed to the address provided by the respective business. With our next assistant news, we've got going very far. In South Carolina, the town of Bluffton is now offering grants to local businesses as well, with assistance up to $20,000. This was called a Small Business Assistance Grant Fund, and this was backed by federal funds from the third stimulus check package to help businesses impacted by the pandemic. Mayor Lisa Sosa said, "The town's business community is a major artery that pumps life into our town. It is a priority to use a portion of the federal funds given to the town through the American Recovery Plan Act to ensure our small businesses continue to thrive. Each of them contributes to our community's collective economic propensity, and it's important for each town council to have these businesses through an unpredictable global hardship." Applications are almost over for this grant, so business owners should hurry up and try to make it before May the 9th. China is now following very strict pandemic-related restrictions. Due to the Omicron variant, and with restrictions come strict rules for import and export. Shenzhen just came out of lockdown early last week. Now the many restrictions in place have now created contraction at Chinese ports, with container ships being rerouted to avoid delays, and things seem to be become dire as there seems to be no easy fix for the supply chain crisis. Richard Welling, a professor of supply chain strategy, says, "We used to occasionally have black swan events. The problem at the moment is we have a whole flock of black swans coming at us. You effectively need to have continual monitoring." So take 1 million containers due to travel to Europe from China by train. But as the route goes through Russia, the journey must change course and use the sea. And while it's not just China, even our ports in California are struggling due to backlogs of cargo ships. Now, a huge factor is played by the sanctions that the West has placed on Russia. Sanctions were placed too hurriedly that it makes you question if the ripple effect was even thought of. With a country as important as Russia to global trade, one could have had to question what else could have been done to slow down their advance. The war between the Ukraine and Russia, it's impacting over 300,000 companies together with a supply chain of global proportions, according to Intuit's founder and CEO, Jennifer Persick. Well, we are seeing an impact over 300,000 companies out of the US and Europe alone. And if you think about it, we're literally cutting parts of the world off from the developed supply chain, which is really causing a transparency and just a continuity problem. But she also cites multiple industries are reliant on some raw materials and a large percentage of them are coming out of Russia. You are seeing a massive cascading effect on an already limping system of a global supply chain. Citigroup global chief economist Nathan Sheets said, "At the moment, the storm clouds on the horizon look quite menacing. Bottom line, an already complicated picture has become even more complex." Now, the price of everything has been rising these past couple of months, and as more Americans have less to pull out of their wallet, the situation is becoming direr and direr. Multiple states are now offering different forms of stimulus proposals. On the Republicans and Democrats are not seeing eye to eye. This is causing setbacks as the checks are being dubbed giveaways or stimulus checks for the midterm elections, and most of these lawmakers are up for re-election. Now in Delaware, Governor John Carney plans to use part of the state stimulus budget to give each resident a $300 stimulus check. Now, the plan is due $186.6 million out of the record highest surplus budget of the state to have direct checks sent to each Delawarean that filed a 2020 tax return. The check could actually impact around 600,000 citizens and is expected to pass pretty quickly as it is in support from both Democrats as well as the Republicans. Governor Carney had this to say, "My hope is these direct payments or stimulus check will provide some measure of relief for Delaware families who are dealing with a higher cost at the grocery store and at the gas pump. These direct payments to Delaware families are part of a broader, responsible budget proposal that will invest in education, our economy, and Delaware communities, and increase our reserves to prepare our state for the future." So House Republicans proposed a plan early this month in Delaware as well to provide direct $100 stimulus checks instead of a cut of the gas tax. It's not multiple 1,000s of dollars, but it's still something. Now, the tax in Delaware for gas is around 23 cents per gallon and 22 cents for diesel gas or diesel fuel. As this tax funds the Transportation Trust Fund, which actually pays for road projects, it cannot be altered due to the protests that are currently in place. This proposal has also garnered Republican support. State House Minority Leader Danny Short said in a prepared statement, "The state has hundreds of millions of dollars more than what is needed to pay for our annual funding bills, including prudently setting aside money in reserve. Hopefully, this rebate will not be treated as the final solution, but rather a good start towards balancing the state's needs with those of our citizens."